TIFU by not discussing with my kids more about their culture. So, I am white. That's the extent of what I know about my heritage. I am white and my husband is white. He says he's German, but really knows nothing of German culture. I grew up in a native home and participated in many aspects of the culture as a young child. But family issues made us drop contact with most family. So my family no longer participated. It's just a part of my childhood now. But I wouldn't say it's my culture anymore. Today, I and all the other second-grade parents were invited to Culture Day. Since we never received any homework or directions, I assumed the kids had learned about different cultures and were doing a presentation of some kind. What actually happened was parents and their kids were put on their own to put together a quick presentation of their own culture. Then some would present. I tried to help my son, but he has some mental health problems that cause meltdowns when he's overwhelmed. He almost immediately expressed an interest to do it alone. His teacher and I both know that it's best to let him be when that happens. So her and I chatted about his progress while he did it. When he was done, he asked his teacher if he could go first and showed me. The paper had spots for traditions, clothing, music, food, language, and a blank box to put what they wanted. Above where his name should have gone was the header of the paper. My family culture. He thought he was supposed to name his culture. He wrote Mexican. I explained that the line was just for his name and he definitely wasn't Mexican. He got mad and scribbled it out and wrote mixed. No. Child. White. White white. And then the teacher called us up to present. So me and my pasty white child stood up while he showed his paper. I was beet red and rebuttaling everything silently in my head. Under food, he drew pictures of tacos. His favorite food. Should have put tater tot hot dish or runzas. Under traditions, he drew a soccer ball. This boy's never played soccer, but wants to. Under language, he wrote some Spanish. He can count to 5 and say hola. Under clothing, he drew a Husker jersey. Okay, I can't argue that. Under music, he wrote Believer by Imagine Dragons. What? Okay, fine. And under the open section, he wrote I was born in America and drew an American flag. Okay, I was just embarrassed. So as we went back to our seats, I mumbled, that was incorrect. And he very loudly responded with, well, I think I should be Mexican. I never want to go back to a parent event. Update. Due to an incident at school today, I had to pick him up early and take him to the emergency room to get a few stitches. In an attempt to distract him, I told him that I posted this, and he made people smile. I also told him about the few suggestions to find a Hispanic spouse. He didn't know what that meant, so I explained. He has now chosen his friend Jordan because her mom makes the best yellow rice. 100%. The way to this boy's heart is with good Mexican food. This weekend, our city is doing their Cinco de Mayo festival. So his reward for doing so well while getting stitches will be the best elote and tacos we can find. Thanks for the interactions. I tend to care entirely too much about what people think. So I was mortified yesterday. But it was cute. TL. Dear, my very white son prepared and presented to the class a culture assignment explaining that he is Mexican, based almost solely on his love of tacos and ability to count to 5 in Spanish. Well, he's not Mexican, but if he plays his cards right, he can definitely marry into a Mexican family when he grows up rolling on the floor laughing. Sorry, he's Mexican now. I don't make the rules. Ma'am, your boy is Mexican. I did something similar when I was in elementary school. My parents told me we were mostly from Latvia, Lithuania, but I couldn't remember either of those. words by the time I got to school, so I picked the most similar sounding word from the list when I got to class, and it was Ethiopia. The teacher didn't want to tell me I was wrong because there was no harm in letting me learn about Ethiopia. It's alright, one of my mates told me when he was 18 about his Chinese heritage. I raised an eyebrow and asked if he meant South Asian, but he insisted on the former. Anyways, about 5 years later he runs up to me going, "Dude, you were right. I'm Indian, not Chinese." Quote, absolutely hilarious. Apparently he misheard a relative when he was a kid, and considering his mother is white, it wasn't immediately obvious to him. I've had a bad couple of days. This made me chuckle, so thank you. So he's like a weeb, but for Mexicans? A Mexaboo? This won't help you op, but Mexicans absolutely can look white. My cousins are all blonde with blue eyes, and we're definitely Hispanic. Most people seem to forget that Mexicans can also be light-skinned with light eyes. Coming from outside of the US, this is sort of funny, because in many ways he was actually correct. He is American. To people who are not American, all Americans are American, not African, German, Italian, Irish, Korean, New Yorkers, whatever, just American. Edit. I do not mean America doesn't have subcultures with different heritages, which correlates more or less with the culture from wherever this family emigrated from X number of years ago. I fully understand that, though I think many Americans exaggerate the amount of X culture they actually have, and how close it is to the culture in their original country. My point is that it is interesting from an outside perspective that there is this need to label oneself as something other than American, when America has so much distinctly American culture. Boy chose his path. To be fair, Americans going, "I'm German," when their great-great-granduncle had a German Shepherd doesn't make them German either. So given that this happens all the time, I'd say your son is Mexican if he wants to be. When I was a little kid, 5 or 6, I thought I lived in Mexico 'cause I lived in a majority Latino neighborhood, and that when we went to the other end of the state we were in Scotland 'cause that's where my Scottish family lived. I live in California. Lol, kids are dumb. As a mom of a 7-year-old with her eldest brother married to a Mexican looking to get her permanent residency green card, I completely understand. Luckily she is in 1st grade and doesn't yet understand the nuances of culture. We're working it, and legalities, and no group projects to date. Also, as a person who works with international folks at a higher educational level, visas, I totally get it and can commiserate with you experience. Take heart. Your little one is trying to still understand. Encourage. And take temporary L. It's all good. Fellow parent. Winking face. My family is white except for my brother, who was adopted from Guatemala, and he insisted he was black when he was like 6. I would point out, as a fellow very white American, that if American culture is anything, it is a mix of every culture in the world. Your favorite foods can be kimchi, tacos, sauerbraten, and spotted dick. Your favorite holiday and or sport can also come from any part of the world. That is American culture. Yikes. Kids. Other than laughing because I think your son is probably very like most of the kids in my family of origin, I think we in New Zealand have benefited from the emphasis in our country on cultural heritage. I'm from 6 generations since settlement, but entirely Pakeha, European ancestry. We know our arrival stories and the family names of those ancestors who first arrived, where they came from, and in some cases their reasons for migration. including the forced migration as a convict to Tasmania by at least 2. While we have lost Scots Gaelic in the last 3 generations, my grandmother knew enough to follow if she was in trouble if her parents spoke it. I found I retained bits of regional agricultural dialect when I worked in the part of Scotland they came from. We have also picked up a fair bit from Maori culture too. When I saw my audiologist had a familiar surname, I said, "Vaka Papa time," and he knew it meant we had to identify our family line to see at what point we had a shared ancestor. We were 4th cousins. As for traditions, we now have a public holiday to mark Matariki, which is the Maori New Year, and it means we are sharing in things that will become traditions. One tradition that will become important, I think, is speaking of those who have died in the last year to acknowledge that they have gone to join the ancestors. I guess this ramble is to encourage you that your son can adopt tacos as a cultural food. My partner and I have adopted the tradition of having Japanese food on Christmas Eve to make it easier for his daughters who felt torn if they weren't with their mother on Christmas Day. We even did it last year when neither girl could be there for other reasons. It will stay out tradition. It is part of our family culture now. I think those culture days are BS. Like, I'm 10th generation Canadian and I'm supposed to go explain to them the traditions of my family like we are anything other than Canadian? That's not good enough, I was told. Like, sure, some kids have Italian families and some kids have Dutch families. But to tell a kid that being Canadian isn't enough is ridiculous. When it came around to my kids' turn to do this project, I wrote a letter to the teacher. Told them my kids are 11th generation Canadian and that was the heritage they represent. Ma'am, sir, your child was participating in a mandatory project intended to display skills like drawing and following directions, not reporting to the INS. Who knows if any of the other students gave factual reports? Your son did the thing, and you were able to go and be with him for it. He says he's German, but really knows nothing of German culture, is peak American.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.